Somebody get a doctor. I need a shot of medicine, baby.
When you get shot in the face and you almost die, and you are literally at the point where you know that the next couple of breaths might be your last because you have no color in your skin, you've lost a ton of blood, trying to count your breaths so that you can stay awake, so that you keep your mind active, is a very unnerving thing. You know, getting shot in the face was the easiest part of my journey. It was the recovering that was the worst. Wrestling saved me. I've always said it to everybody that's ever asked, what stopped you from being a number? What stopped you from being a statistic? What stopped you from, having PTSD beat you? What stopped you from having depression and anxiety beat you? And it was wrestling.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Bad Medicine Podcast. Today is a special one. We have a special guest. He is Ben Manthe.
That is me.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Good.
Ben, you're doing an excellent job of sounding enthused for this being the third time we've tried to connect with you and do this due to technical difficulties. So I'm very proud of you. Fucking nerd.
Thank you. I'm trying. Hey, is that Andrew calling people nerds? That fucking
yeah. Oh, the irony.
I know, right? Hey, Pot, have you met Kettle? Calm down, boy.
So, Ben, we'll just dive right into it. We just heard a little bit of the trailer, and there's going to be some people that know your story and then some people that don't know your story. So for the people that don't, if you don't mind, I'd like for us to dive in to hear a little bit about your story.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I was originally a wrestler from 2005 to 2010, which is how we kind of all know each other. And in 2010, I left and joined the United States Army. I was with the 10th Mountain Division, which is light infantry. And after being at my duty station, after basic training for about 16 hours, I got a letter telling me that I was going to Afghanistan. A month later.
Hey, Ben, can I just stop you there for one moment? So just so the listeners understand. So you're saying you were doing about 16 hours of basic training, and then that's how long it was before you found out you were being sent over?
No. I had finished basic training and graduated, and I got to my first duty station where they send you to be actual Army. You're not in the school anymore. You're actually doing stuff.
Okay.
And I got to my duty station in Fort Polk, Louisiana, and I was there. I showed up at 8:00 at night, and by what was it? I want to say it was 2:00 in the afternoon the next day. I had a letter saying, "Hey, you're going to Afghanistan." I was like, "Oh, okay." And originally we were supposed to go on Christmas Eve, and then they kind of were like, "Well, we shouldn't be shitbags to these guys, so we'll back it up a month." So, I went on January 24th, the Tuesday after the Packers beat the Bears in the NFC Championship game, and I'm just saying.
I heard the spite.
I'm just saying.
Oh, what a great day that was.
That was a great day. And so they flew us from Louisiana to Bangor, Maine, and from Maine we went to Germany, and Germany we went to Kuwait, and from Kuwait we went to a place called Kazakhstan, and home of Borat. And then
I was just gonna say, if you met Borat, that was. I didn't know how serious we were getting here, so I was holding off.
Yep. So then we went from Kazakhstan to Afghanistan, and I got to Afghanistan. I was in the Wardak Province, which was on the west side, over by Kabul, in the Pakistani border, in a place. There's a documentary that's really famous that won a bunch of awards a couple years back called The Restrepo, and it's about the Korangal Valley, which is the hottest action spot that there is in Afghanistan. And right next to the Korangal is the Tangi Valley, and they meet in the middle. And I was in the Tangi Valley right where it met with the Korangal. So it was in 2011, it was the hottest spot for firefights and IEDs and things like that. So we got there. It took us about 6 days of travel to get there. I got to my duty station. I was there for 8 months. And with about 50 days left in my tour, we got tasked up to do a mission in an area that nobody had been in for 4 years. And the last time somebody was there, they had to withdraw. And our job was to get all the way to the district center that was behind this village that had always been a problem. Well, as we work our way there, we drop off supplies and build up connexes to have like overwatch positions, basically, was what we were building. And after we had done 2 overwatch positions, we got to our 3rd one, which was going to be the hardest one, and we knew it was going to be a problem. And I just remember we came over the valley, or came over the hill and looked down into the valley. And I looked out and I couldn't believe what I saw. I was up in the gunner's turret, and I looked down, and there is probably 13, 14 Russian tanks from the 70s with the old Russian logo on there. And some of them were beat up and blown to bits. Other ones were just sitting there. And when Russia had evacuated Afghanistan in 1977, they jumped off and just left all their stuff there. They didn't do anything with it. They didn't take it home. They actually kind of primarily gave the Afghanis weapons because they left everything behind and just ran, basically. So we saw that. We kind of knew that it was going to be a pretty gnarly time then. And then the whole day went by and it was normal. We didn't have anything happen until 5 o'clock besides a dust storm. And now this is where it gets fuzzy. So I was going to get something, and I have no idea to this day what I was going to get. And it just drives me nuts because it's been 8 years and I still can't remember. And I was walking to go get something, and all of a sudden I heard the crack of bullets, and it just went ding, 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 ding. And all of a sudden the dirt kicked up by my foot, and the bullets had probably missed me by about 1.5 feet to my right. So it was close enough that the dirt kicked up and hit me in the pant leg. And so we all run to take cover, dive down behind a couple of sandbags, and we're like looking for all the rest of our guys because everybody basically scattered. None of us even had our weapons on us because we were building HESCO barriers, which is basically a small wall that stops bullets. They're about 16 feet wide by about 10 feet high, and then you fill them with dirt, and that's your protective barrier from the locals or from whoever. And so we didn't even have our weapons on us to fire back, and so we had to like run to go to our weapons, which was a whole mess. And my sergeant looked at me and asked me to find the guys that were in my squad, and I found everybody except for one of them, and I couldn't find my one buddy. Well, then I finally did find him, and when I looked back to tell my sergeant I had found him, a bullet came through and hit me right in the face. And it was a bullet that was shot from an old Chetnian sniper rifle, which is what I've been told by all my buddies. They said that's the only thing it could have been, because it was a denser based lead bullet from probably a Russian round. And what happens with the old bullets like that is they're heavier on the back end of the bullet. So when you fire them and they go across a long distance, the bullet starts to flip over end like a field goal kick. And just by the luck of the flip, the bullet went in backwards in my face, in my lower left jaw, and stopped in the back of my jaw and didn't go all the way through. Had the bullet actually hit me dead on, it would have killed me for sure. So that happened. I immediately like blacked out, and everything kind of came back. And when everything came back, I was hunched over and I saw the blood on me, and I knew it was bad because it was really dark blood. It wasn't like bright red. It was that purple stuff, and I knew I was in some trouble. And I yelled for my medic, and he came over, started shoving gauze in my face. And we're still taking contact at this point. And my first sergeant runs over like G.I. Joe Rambo, firing back at guys. He baseball slides right next to us and looks down at me, and he goes, "Jesus Christ, Mont, you got shot in the fucking face. You're a tough motherfucker." And I was like, I just kind of nodded like, uh-huh. And he goes, and he looks down at me and he goes, "Well, what do you want to do? You want to stay here and wait for the litter, or do you want to try to make a run for it?" And I looked up at him and thinking to myself, why the fuck are you asking me? Like does the owner of Taco Bell ask the worker of like what the special of the week should be? No, they just say, "Hey, this is what we're doing." And so I, in my best game of charades of my life, point at my first sergeant, take my pointer and my middle finger and make a little running man motion, and then point to myself and point to my medic, and then point down the mountain. And he goes, "You want to make a run for it?" And I gave him the finger followed by a thumbs up. And he goes, "Fuck yeah." And I go, "Uh-huh." And I just nodded my head. And so he was like, "Fuck yeah, let's go." And the next thing you know, I did the most embarrassing sandbag job of all time as we ran down the side of this mountain about 400 yards. And for every 10 steps they took, I maybe took 2. I was just dragging. I had no motor skills or nothing. I was toast. And we got down to the bottom. And of course, me being like, "Hey, I'm fine." I try to set up my own gurney because, I'm a helper. And that makes a lot of sense. And they're like, "Knock it off, dumbass, lay down." I'm like, "Oh, fine. You don't gotta get mad at me."
I'm just a people pleaser.
Yeah. I was just trying to be a team player. I wasn't trying to hurt nobody. But then they did that. The helicopter finally came, or the helicopter couldn't land at first because we were taking so much contact. The F-18s came through, and they dropped 4 2,000-pound JNAM bombs. So the guys who shot me is not in one place anymore, but several. And so it was something, man. When you see the side of a mountain become a great big ass hole, that's an interesting sight to see. And then the helicopter came and landed, and when it landed, it picked us up. They shoved an IV into my shin bone. That was a needle that looked like a dipstick for your car. So that was awesome. I had a beautiful flight medic, and she cut all my clothes off of me. And I jokingly said to her, as best as I could, "Don't tell my wife that you got me naked faster than she did." And which I thought was an extremely solid opening line. I was really
that's a 10.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Yeah, I was really proud of myself on that one. And then I passed out. And then I woke back up, and I was in Fob Shank, which is where they were taking care of me. And then they were like, "Okay, we're gonna get the bullet out and do your surgery." And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure." They're like, "Do you want us to tell your wife?" I was like, "Just tell her I have a cut on my lip. I don't want her to worry." Okay, that was my thought process. And then the next thing you know, I woke up in Germany, and they're like, I couldn't talk. They had to intubate me because I had lost my airway, and my carotid had they had to actually put a stent in my neck because my carotid artery was swollen and had pressure put on it. So they had to put a little thing around it to stop it from kinking. And so because I had went critical twice on the helicopter from Afghanistan to Germany, or to the plane, excuse me, from the C-17 plane in Afghanistan to Germany. I had actually went critical twice. And so then I woke up in Germany, and they were like, "Hey, we're gonna take care of you. This is what's happened." And they kind of freshened me up on what was going on and what they were gonna do. And then they called my wife, and I heard my wife, and I couldn't talk, so I had to write everything down. And me, being the Don Juan Casanova that I am, the first thing I write is, "Ask my wife if she wants to drop the hammer," which is our Days of Thunder reference of having sex. So, and
Days of Thunder, that was just talked about last week.
Yeah, and my wife, I could hear my wife laughing on the phone, and she even admits to this day that when she heard that, she knew I was going to be okay. And then I passed out again, and I took I just took a nice little coma for about 4 days, and woke back up with a beard, and that was some shit. Looked out my window and saw the Texas flag, and was like, "Well, hot damn!" And the next thing you know, I was in San Antonio, Texas, and then the real fun began, because then there was no more rest or sleep. So they put everything back together for me, and really started the process of fixing my face and getting my traumatic brain injury under control, and my medications and stuff like that. So that's it in a nutshell. I try to make it as short as I can. It's just a long ass story.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And certainly I think it's important also for the listeners to know that, this wasn't just a one-off surgery for you, correct? You had to have multiple?
Yeah, I had 14 facial reconstructions, and I had 16 total procedures on my face. From the day I got shot to the last day that they did the last thing with my face, it took 1,900 days exactly.
Geez, and you didn't have any input as far as saying, like you didn't bring a picture of like Brad Pitt or Tom Hardy in with you and say, hey, can you maybe do something with this?
I was just going to ask if you were going to get it to look better.
No, but they did put cadaver bone in my face. So I like to tease my wife and tell her that I have a hot supermodel who died in a tragic boating accident. And she likes to retort with that I have a 45-year-old plumber named Hank who had type 2 diabetes and was drastically overweight.
Well, I hate to break to you, but she's probably more correct than you are.
More than likely. That would explain why my plumbing skills have went up by like 6 points since I started back. So.
Yeah, that does tend to happen. I've seen a couple of bad movies on that. That seems to be the case. But
glad to base the science on a movie.
So you get through all that.
Yep.
Which is, clearly right there a lot more than what most people could handle. And then kind of where did you find yourself? What mindset did you find yourself in? Did you feel like you were still kind of missing something? Because that's the big thing you hear about, right? Is, so many soldiers come back and they miss the brotherhood. They miss working together towards a goal. I guess, was that something that you were really kind of yearning for?
Well, it was really hard because when I finally did get out of the hospital, I was in the hospital for almost a month. And when they finally had me get out of the hospital, I went into a thing called the Warrior in Transition Battalion, which is basically everybody who got fucked up. So it's all the amputees, it's all the IED guys, it's all the burn victim guys, it's all the guys who got shot. It's everybody like that. We call ourselves the broke dicks. We're all a bunch of broke dicks. So we were in the broke dick battalion, and basically they have you just your mission from then on is just to get better. Like that's all they want you to do. They don't make you do anything else. Go to your doctor appointments, see your therapist, take your medication, be where you need to be for formations, and just do the Army thing. And so that's what we did. But it was hard for me because my guys were still back in Afghanistan. And we're there for 2 months until when I finally got to go back to my regular duty station. It took about 4 months before I got to go back. It was just weird because seeing all those guys again, and it was crazy because they had never gotten an update about me. They didn't know if I was alive or dead. They didn't know if I had made it or not. Everything was, because of where we were and what we were doing, everything was classified, and they couldn't share the information of what had happened besides what everybody had seen. And so meeting them was really emotional. It was pretty hard. And then I think it was a couple days after that, they basically sat me down and said, listen, you'll never be in an infantry field again. You'll never do anything with any type of physical activity. So drill instructor is out, or any type of, sniper qualifications that you had dreams of doing or anything like that is not going to happen. You're going to have to be on the, office side of things if you're going to stay. And I just remember thinking to myself, well, I am like the last fucking guy who's the office secretary, so that's not going to happen. And I had to have a long talk with my wife, and then they finally came back a couple days later with the process of what they were going to do. And we did all my rating stuff for if I want to get out, because they make you do that just in case. And then when I got out of the Army, it was basically, it wasn't that I wanted to leave. It was that there was really, like, I couldn't do what I was trained to do, so there was no point in staying for me.
Right. There was just nothing there. Totally.
Yeah. And then so the drop off wasn't that bad though, because San Antonio is a very military city. They are really big on the military. They have 3 Air Force bases there, and then also the Army base, and it's a pretty big area that's really overpopulated with veterans and stuff like that. Fun side note story on that: I lived a mile away from where Shawn Michaels grew up on Randolph Air Force Base, and they have a picture of his dad in the actual medical hall for a former commander of the medical wing there.
Really?
Yep. So that was some shit.
That's incredible.
Yeah, but so then I did that, and then when I retired in July of 2013, they had given me 100% disability and told me that I was all free and clear to go, and the money was a lot better getting out than staying in, and it was the thing about the kids and stuff like that, because we just had, we had our 2 kids, and Crystal had just had our 3rd kid 4 days before I retired. And it was one of those things where we just had to. It was family time. We wanted to do that. Well, then we were living in San Antonio for a couple of weeks, and I still had all my friends around me, so it wasn't that bad. And then we got called by Operation Homefront about possibly being able to be gifted a house anywhere in the United States, and we jumped on that and tried to, we were hopeful that we were good candidates and they would pick us. And not only did they wind up picking us, but then Tim McGraw, the country singer, had actually picked us for his 31 city tour, and he and Chase Bank and Operation Homefront together gave us our house here in Wisconsin. So yeah, Tim McGraw, the country singer, gave me a house, which is another weird part of my life.
Yeah, that's incredible.
I had no prior knowledge of this, so I wanted to get behind it, and that's pretty awesome that something like that could happen.
Yeah.
And it's funny, man, because, I'm looking outside here on a Sunday, and it's about 8 degrees, and you could have picked anywhere, huh?
Yeah, I could have picked anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for. I was a sucker for home at the time, and
I'm with you.
Yeah, right. And nothing was bad, and like we moved here and everything was good, and I think it was about 3 months of living here, and then the bottom fell out pretty hard, where it was just like I felt like I failed, and I was really, survivor guilt was really hard because it was, we had a lot of other guys who got hurt there when we were over there, and wondering about them, and that's when the whole kind of started, where it was just like, what am I doing? Like, and it's hard because, I was like, you retire at 30. Like, what do you do? There's no playbook on this, and,
I think a lot of times people think it would be great to, to retire early and, you're done and things like that. But when you're used to being a very driven person with, clearly defined goals and things that your objectives, so to speak, I can imagine that'd be a huge change. I mean, you see that with NFL players all the time. They get done playing, then they don't know what to do with themselves. And I can only imagine that must have been 1,000 times worse. You're sitting at home and just trying to figure out where to go.
Yeah, at my job where I work, we have a lot of ex-military people, and they all talk about that too all the time. The struggle of trying to get back into a normal life after being in the military for 4, 8, how many years they've been in.
Yeah, exactly. And then it just got from there. It got crazier because a year went by and I didn't go see anybody like I should have. I didn't take care of myself mentally at all. And then I started losing guys. So in August of 2014, I lost my first guy to suicide, who's named Christopher Linhoff, and he was a guy I was in basic training with, and he had died on his birthday. And so that was like the first one, and he was I mean, we weren't super close, but we were really close. I mean, I don't want to say he was my best friend in basic, but we had a really good understanding. We were really good buddies. He was part of our clique and stuff, so we always kind of had each other's backs, and so that one really hurt. And then I think it was 2 months later I lost my second guy, and then they just all started dropping, and it was one of those things where the bottom's already falling out. You already feel like you kind of lost, and then your buddies start dying, and then they're not just dying; they're killing themselves, and then you can't help but feel like it's your fault a little bit because you didn't read. Like, when's the last? Like, for every time it happened, I'd always go back through when's the last time I talked to him on Facebook.
Right.
And then you see, you haven't talked to him in 3 months, and you're like, wow, like I'm a dick. I should have said something. I should have just, and I mean, life gets in the way, and it is what it is. But your brain just kind of automatically goes there, and that was tough. And then, and then for me, that just kind of sealed my fate for that little bit of time, because then I, started abusing my pain meds, because 1 became 2, and 2 became 4, and 4 became 8, and then the next thing you know, I'm taking 12 pills a day. I'm going through 180 Percocet in like 2 weeks, and my wife is, has at the beginning had no idea, because I was the worst kind of addict that there was. I was the addict who didn't think he was an addict, but who was also a smart addict and could still had the ability of choosing when he took his stuff, so that nobody else could see that he was, high out of his gourd. Which is the worst one to be, period. And but then eventually that self-control falls out the bottom too, and then you can't really pick when you want to take 8, 9 pills and get high. Like it's It's one of those things where it just kind of happens. And then, you hide it from the doctors and you're like, hey, what would help is instead of giving me 180 Percocet, you should just give me 90 Oxy because it's the same thing. And then they're like, oh yeah, you're a stand-up soldier. We'll help you out. And here you go. And then you graduate from Percocet to Oxy, and it's like, well, this is even better. And it's not. It's actually way worse.
That's my whole life.
Yeah, no, I mean, you hear about that. You hear about, and this is, I guess my own bias, but to me, that just screams laziness of a bureaucratic structure that just wants to give guys pills and shut them up instead of taking the time, putting in the work, and helping these people.
I can tell you right now that that on the military side of things, that's exactly what they do. I had a retired colonel as my doctor, and he was a really nice guy. But that guy's answer to everything was, well, I'm going to write you a prescription for this. I'm going to write you a prescription for that. Here's this, here's this, here's that. And I mean, there was at one point when I was first out of the hospital. When I was first out of the hospital, I think I had like 13 different medications I had to take, but it was mostly to get my brain fixed because of all the swelling and stuff. But then as time tapered off, it was just everything was pills. That was always the answer. It wasn't like, well, why don't you go talk to somebody? Why don't you go do this? Why don't we figure this out, figure that out, give you these exercises, give you these tools.
Right. Exactly.
And the VA does a better job of that. But the problem is that the VA is so overwhelmed and so understaffed and so under budgeted that it's just as bad. So.
Yeah, I've heard plenty of stories of guys having to deal with the VA and how it's just so rough, and since they're overwhelmed, they don't listen to everything that you say, and so then things get mixed up or they don't get everything right.
Oh man, I can tell you right now that for the VA, so like when you retire out of the Army and you get out, the Army doesn't pay your retirement pay. You get, if you're wounded, the VA pays you a per diem, and like you get your VA retirement pay. Which is a different kind of pay structure. But there's a gap between those. So the Army pays you like $1,300 a month while you're retired until you get your first VA paycheck. And your first VA paycheck is a back paycheck. And the waiting list for this to get to get the money that you're supposed to live off of for the rest of your life is over 2 years long. And then when you get so I was still in the Army, and I was in there for 13 months before I retired, and I was still waiting to get my VA pay. And I had to wait another 6 months before I finally got it. So I got expedited to the front of the line. It still took 18 months for me to get my first paycheck from the VA.
Wow.
And that was getting pushed to the front of the line. There's guys who have disability ratings that were lower than mine that waited double the time. I mean, I had a couple of guys who I had talked to that had said that it took 32 months to get their stuff done, which is insane. And it's just an overwhelmed system. That's the problem.
So you've been going, you were going through this, you were going through the hassle with the VA, you were having self-doubts and that sort of thing. What kind of was the turning point for you to look at yourself and say, okay, I've had enough of this. There's two ways to go here. Did you have that moment, I guess? I don't want to put words in, but,
I did. No, I did, but it wasn't me. It was my wife. My wife caught me. I mean, like any addict, you slip up and sooner or later you get caught. And my wife caught me, told her it was going to be fine. And then when she caught me the second time, that was when we had the sit down, come to Jesus moment where it was, listen, you are a father of 4 and my husband. We have this life. This is going to end that. It's literally this or us. And I'm not giving you she just really kind of brutally honestly said, I'm not going to even give you a minute to decide. You're going to tell me right now. Because if it takes you more than 10 seconds to tell me us or them, then,
Yeah, you've kind of made your choice at that point, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And immediately I said her and went to the VA, started seeing somebody, talking to somebody about it. And then it was very much my wife kind of grabbing me by the old shirt collar and shaking me, awake and being like, fix yourself. You're really jacked up right now. And it's been good ever since then. And then it turned into, okay, I almost, went to that really dark part. Like, how do I make sure that nobody else does this? And it was after I kind of had fixed myself and felt like I was back on my 2 feet and kind of better. it was, then wrestling kind of came back, and I was able to wrestle a match in December 2014, and it was everything I wanted it to be. It was nice, and then when that went away, and I took another year off of wrestling and didn't do anything, that was when the pills and stuff really kind of took hold, and that was when it was really bad. It was because I had trained, and the thing that I kept the monster at bay for so long was, I trained for 4.5 months to get into shape to wrestle that match. And,
to do that one match.
Yeah.
Right.
And I had, and I look back on it, I was fine because I had a mission, I had a purpose, and I had a goal. And, and the second that was over, I didn't have that anymore. And then it was easy to slip right down into depression. So, that's what wound up, I wound up going to my doctors and saying, hey, if I wanted to do this full time, like, is this something that I could do? Is this even possible? And I was expecting everybody to say no, but one by one, they kind of were like, yeah, but you got to come in and check with us. You got to check with us. You got to check with us. And so we kind of made a plan where it was, I would go talk to them and check with them. And, my wife was really pushing for me to go and do the wrestling again, because she's like, you need an outlet. The problem is you don't have a purpose or a mission or an outlet. Like you need this. And so she really pushed me forward to going back into doing it full time. And I was able to come back in 2016, and I've been back ever since. And that's when I got wrestling back in my life, it was like, that was the switch, and everything turned back on, and I was fine. And then that's what kind of snowballed everything into wanting to start Frontline Pro Wrestling and to give back to the veteran community. And then,
Nope, Ben, you still there?
yeah, I'm still there. Sorry about that.
Oh no, that's fine. We just weren't sure if we're gonna have to take number 5 here.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, no. Also, that's okay. So you got things going back with the wrestling. You're kind of back in the saddle there. You started up your own promotion. Obviously using that, as best you can to try to help others. And I guess, where has wrestling taken you now recently?
Well, everything kind of snowballed in the last 2 years and really took off. And I got really lucky and had an opportunity to go to Canada and wrestle there and do stuff over there. And then I had a really good experience there. And then I wound up being able to go to Japan. And it wasn't that I was great. It was just a lucky star kind of a thing, fell in my lap. I got lucky and had a really good tour there, got invited back, had a second tour there. And then just in November of this last year, I went for my third tour there. And now it's just awesome, and it's a fun time. So
when you say tour, Ben, like, are we talking like a 5-day tour? Are we talking 2 days? We talking 10? How many days were you?
All of them were 2 weeks. All three of them were 2 weeks long.
Okay. And, and obviously you were in the military, you had been to a lot of different places in the world. I know you and I briefly talked about it on a show a couple months back. For the listeners, can you kind of talk about, I guess, the culture shock you had, even for those 10 days going into Japan? I know you had told a couple of different stories to me about being over there and just the flood of humanity that you saw, and the pure amount of people.
It is packed. They build things on top of things. I've never seen anything like it in my life. I mean, any type of shopping center you went to had 7 levels. They don't build outwards; they build upwards. And just the biggest culture shocks were the food, because they don't really do grocery stores. Everything's kind of like all in. Like, you can't find a Walmart there, or like a Festival Foods, or like they don't have stuff like that. And a lot of it's restaurants based and little mom and pop cafe places with their ramen noodles and things like that. And the ramen is really big over there, man. I can't even tell you. Those ramen shops are huge. And then just the wrestling fans themselves were so, it's real. It's really real to them. It's baseball and professional wrestling over there. And they treat you like a superstar. They treat you like you're top notch, cloud 9. When I went for my second tour, I was actually over there with Dave Christ from OI4K and the OVE guys from Impact Wrestling. And then we had met up with Hanson and Rowe, the War Raiders now in WWE. And those guys walked me around and kind of told me all these stories about everything. I mean, fans buy you dinner. They literally come to your shows to make sure that you're taken care of. I had a fan my first tour. I showed up and he's like, hey, this, that, and the other thing. I told him he asked me where I was staying for a hotel, and I told him, and he goes, oh, that's not a really good one. Hold on. And he came back and he goes, here, you go to this hotel. I paid for it. It's for you. And it was like a $400 hotel room. And
Oh, wow.
so then I try to be nice and give the money from the hotel back to the promoter, and the promoter goes, "Oh no, that's your bonus." And my bonus was bigger. My bonus was bigger than my payday. So,
What would you say the biggest difference is between an American wrestling crowd and a Japanese wrestling crowd?
sophistication. Honestly, there's no better way to say it. It's just when you do something there, it's very like golf clappy, it's like a much more appreciated crowd. And they still pop. I mean, they still pop for big things when you do big waterfall stuff and things like that. Like they pop for the big stuff, but they also appreciate the little stuff. I wrestled Kenso, the old WWE Tag Team champion from 2004 on SmackDown. He had the Kabuki Girl. I wrestled him in a tournament over there, and literally the spot we did over there was he grabbed both my hands in a knuckle lock, gave me a leg sweep, and tried to pin me. I picked my arm up. He tried to pin me. I picked my arm up. He tried to pin me. He tries to pin me 10 times. I picked my arm up all 10 times, and the fans acted like I had just hit him with a missile dropkick. It was like it was that the fighting spirit is what they call it over there is such a huge thing that it's just so much different than America, and it all feels real. It feels like a fight. When I defended the KOTC title in Sportiva down in Nagoya, I mean, it was tons of cameras and media, and we're sitting there taking pictures with the belt in the ring right before I'm supposed to wrestle my opponent. And then like the ladies are giving us flowers, and it's like a whole thing. And it was just like, I can remember sitting there thinking to myself, like, this would never happen in America in a million years. This is the weirdest.
No, it is.
Yeah, because I was gonna ask, like, how are Japanese wrestlers versus American wrestlers?
That strong style stuff is bullshit. They like everybody thinks that's what they want to do all the time. I'm gonna let you in on a secret. It's not. You got to remember, these guys wrestle for a living, so they do 20 to 30 matches a month. You know, they're not looking to do strong style every single time. And the biggest thing that I was told from a wrestler there, that the biggest mistake Americans make is they come over and they strong style whoever they wrestle, and they beat the shit out of the guy. And the Japanese are nice and thank them for the time, and then they never come back again because they did all the bullshit. And I had the really sound advice from my buddy over there. He came up to me and said, "Hey, you know what we need to do tonight is do comedy and haha and just be super entertaining." All right, cool. And we worked really light with the guys we worked, and we did all the haha, and that's what got me like asked back to go for my second one. So
sure, I can see that be a misconception if a guy's been over here in America watching a bunch of tapes of Akiyama and Tenzan or something from back in the day, and these guys are just killing each other and no selling and everything else, and you go over there and you think, oh, this is what it is.
So this is every match.
Yeah, exactly.
And then somebody grabs you and says, "Hey, lighten up, brother. It's a work."
Hey, I'm telling you right now, that's what it's like, man. They don't like. We did some super shows where they were like, I worked strong style there, but only at the promoter's request. Only at the we did a thing called Shampura this last year, and we were in a 6-man tag match, and I was told, hey, strong style tonight, please. And it was like, yeah, okay, no problem. Because for those big super WrestleMania type shows that they do, when we did the Budokan, we were really lucky this last tour. Myself and Dredd and Vic Capri, we went and got to rock the Budokan over in Okinawa, and for Just Tap Out, which is a promotion that works with Kaientai Dojo, which is Taka Michinoku, and like Fujinami was on there, and Kota Ibushi was on there, and Taka was on there, and Sema was on there, and it was a who's who type of thing. And that was the night where they were like, hey, strong style tonight, please, thank you. And so, and you're kind of just looking like it's almost funny when you listen to it, because it's like, you want me to beat the shit out of somebody? Like, okay, I suppose.
Get your shit in, brother.
Yeah, that's really what it is.
So, Ben, I'm going to take a small transition here. I believe, and I can't remember the story, but did Quinn make you eat like 4 pies or something? Tell us some pranks that Quinn used to do to you.
Well,
just give us a few stories, because I know there's that pie story, and I keep forgetting what it was.
Well, first off, Quinn was the worst, like, ever.
Like Mayor McCheese, everybody loved me.
Quinn was the guy. I always looked at, like, there was a group of guys when I broke in that were like the gatekeepers, and it was like Quinn and Tommy Gunn and Dinty Moore and Dysfunction and Silas Young and Steve Stone.
You're being far too kind to put me in there with those guys. Far too kind.
And so those are the guys. And so Quinn, one night we got drunk at Sharky's bar, and afterwards we went to Perkins, and Quinn's like, "You're gonna eat a pie," and I was like.
Was he talking like Vince McMahon with that?
Yeah, and I laughed, and I was like, "Nah, I'm just gonna get some moons over my ham." And he goes, "Damn it, Greenie, you're not eating shit besides what I tell you. You're gonna eat that fucking pie, and you're gonna like it."
And what kind of pie was it again?
And he goes, "You're gonna eat a pecan pie." And I'm like, and I go, "But Quinn, we have a problem." And he goes, "What?" And I go, "I'm allergic to pecans, man. Like, I'm gonna die." And scarily enough, I was waiting for him to literally look at me and go, I'm pulling Ivan Drago and go, "If you die, you die." And and so he goes, "Fine, I'll let you choose the pie. I'm a fair guy." And I'm like, wow, I don't even fucking like pie to begin with, so this whole thing sucks anyway. and he goes, "Pick one," and I go, "I don't know, pumpkin pie," because I was thinking, hey, that's got to be really easy, you don't even got to eat the crust. So the lady comes out and brings me this pumpkin pie, a whole pumpkin pie, and I go to stick my fork in it, and my fork fucking bends because it's frozen solid.
That is the part I remember the most, is the pie being frozen. I gotta say.
And so Quinn is like, "Oh, it's okay. I'm not gonna make you eat a frozen pie. Let me help you out here. Hey, sweetheart, why don't you throw that in the microwave for 1 minute? Thank you." And I looked at him and I'm like, 1 minute? That ain't gonna do shit. Like, what are you? So it comes back, and the pie is still completely frozen in the middle, but it's soupy on the outsides. And he goes, and he looks at me, and I look down at the pie, and I look at him, and he goes, "Start your way on the edge and work to the middle."
Well, that was solid advice.
It was. And so I ate a whole pie that night. That was the.
Yeah, I gotta say, we had a ton of great memories and great matches working for Franklin and Falco down there at BCW. I mean, it was a great group of guys. Everybody was kind of in that same. Everybody kind of had the same mindset. They wanted to go out there, have a great match, but then they also wanted to hang out afterwards. Were you there when Ted DiBiase Jr. was on one of the shows?
I was there when him and Tate and Darren Wade were all there from
that's from all the guys down south.
Yeah, from Noah. All those Noah guys came down there, and they were all big into their. I just remember that certain people got mad because me and Justin Dredd got over with them more than they did, and then they got upset with us. I was
telling the fellas the story about when we were in what was that bar we used to go to? It wasn't Sharky's. It was a different one. But anyhow, we were there, and I think Dysfunction started it, where we were calling Ted DiBiase Jr. Randy Orton for like the whole night. We were trying to convince all the women in the bar that he was Randy Orton. And then like 3 months later, when he gets called up, he's in Randy Orton's group. I just got a kick out of that. It was outstanding.
I always remember that was funny. I remember one of the funnier ones that I remember, though, was, and it was a little later on in the deal, but when you were on Raw and got busted open with the ladder by Hunter.
Oh, we still got to dive into that.
And Quinn walks into NWA Wisconsin at the time, and it's like everybody just looked at him like he was the golden goose because he made it to the show. It was, and I remember everyone was laughing and it was cool and stuff. But I remember I look over and this terrible wrestler named Tony Mega looks at me and he goes, "Man, can you believe it? How lucky is he?" And I go, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "They did a close up on his face on Raw."
Go ahead, Ben.
And I was just like, "Yeah, man, they sure did." That was
that's all I got for you. Yeah, I think well, and then the funny thing with that is that like one of the first guys I see after I come through the curtain is Teddy Jr. sitting there, and like I just give him a laugh and I said, I said something like, "What did they do to my beautiful face?" or some shit like that, and he had a laugh about it. So it was all good,
Well,
good stuff.
you were laughing about it because from what I heard, you were getting stitches put in, crying like a little baby.
I'm pretty sure Swago was giving us that status report.
Well, everybody has their own, I guess, but I do have verification.
Was that the afterbar when Swaggle punched DBS in the nuts?
Oh man.
So Benny, I gotta put you over here for a moment because a young green Diamond Dave came in after Mason Quinn spotted him in the gym one day.
What
And,
what were you doing at the gym, Dave? Were you wiping down the equipment or?
I was doing my best to trying to lift 5 pounds, buddy.
I'm just
It was a chest day for Dave.
Light chest day, toning up.
toning up. Every day is a tone day for Dave Damone.
You got it, brother. So anyway, a young Diamond Dave comes in and has a match with, I believe it was Cody Rice. Poor Cody at that time. Had to work with a green kid. And I remember there was a couple guys, but you and Nick Colucci were one of the first ones to pull me aside. And you gave me a ton of advice, so I got to thank you for that because you saw me as a heel, which I was being a heel. And then you just told me X, Y, Z, and then from there you kind of had my back on stuff. So I gotta thank you for that.
Well, no problem, man. I guess. Hey, I look at it this way: if you weren't worth a shit, I wouldn't have talked to you at all. So.
Well, hey, my first experience really in the ring is I did a battle royal in Fond du Lac, and yeah, you were out there in the ring. I was supposed to get eliminated earlier, and you like grabbed me in the corner and you told me right away, like, dude, no, you're staying in longer. This crowd wants you. We're gonna keep you in longer. And
well, I couldn't be a complete cocksucker. You invited your entire 900 people from your family to the fucking show. Like,
They don't care.
It must be really nice to do a battle royal and get pop of the night because your entire extended family is in the audience.
Gassed and like you were like choking me, and all I could hear you was saying was like, breathe. So I was no selling the choke and just freaking breathing as much as I could.
Oh, imagine that. Andrew was blown up in a match. Never happens.
Never.
In a battle royal, by all means. Holy shit.
Boy, just running those ropes left and right, Daddy.
Hey, didn't I fucking put you over there too, Andrew? Didn't I let you eliminate me?
Yep. Yeah, you did.
Yeah, see? There we go, for the betterment of the business, I guess.
Fucking A.
The suspense of disbelief.
So Ben, what kind of current projects do you got going on? Can you kind of give us a little tidbit of Still Here, the documentary?
Yeah, so what happened was Still Here was one of those things that kind of, again, fell in my lap. I have a lot of that going on. And so it was, I had done my first show for Frontline Pro in Spencer, Wisconsin last year, almost a year ago to the date. The 23rd was the date that we did it last year. And when I did that show, I met a veteran named Eric Beach, and Eric Beach runs a production company called Red Jester Productions. And we kind of got to talking. We were buddies about everything. We even did a show for a nonprofit of his that he was helping out with called In Country. And we just kind of stayed in touch. And then finally, it was one of those things where he was like, hey, man, like, we should do a movie about your life. And so last year we did a beta test where we filmed the show in October. We put it out on Facebook just to see what kind of response we get. And I think as of today, it has like almost 10,000 views, or it has 10,000 views. It's really close. It's a snippet. It's a longer extension of the snippet that you guys played at the beginning of the show. And we did a second one in December just to see again. And that one got about 5,000 views. So we kind of looked at each other and was like, hey, this is something we should try. And we went out, tried to get some funding. And we were very lucky to have Hunt's Brothers Pizza came on board and gave us a huge donation to get us off the ground. And then we did an Indiegogo, which raised us another $2,000. And we had private donations too that helped us out. And so we've raised almost $15,000 to do this movie. And then we got really lucky because Tim Abel, an actor out in Hollywood, he's been in We Were Soldiers with Mel Gibson and done movies with Steven Seagal and all these guys. He jumped on and believed in our project to help us because he had known Eric and he heard the story and wanted to be a part of it. And he actually has a friend that we all kind of know whose name is Rob Van Dam.
RVD.
And Rob Van Dam heard about it and was like, hey, let's talk. And the next thing you know, it's a Wednesday night at 11 o'clock and I'm talking to Rob Van Dam in my kitchen. And thinking to myself, what the hell just happened? Like, why, like, what is going on in my life? And so that all happened. And, you know, Rob was really cool about it. He wanted to help out. He wanted to do stuff. And it just was really awesome to work with. And so now he's on board as an executive producer for us, and is going to have we're going to film with him in Las Vegas here later this year, and really help put the project over. Actually, he just came out with a documentary of his own called Headstrong, which you can find on Vudu, iTunes, and a bunch of other things. And I'm in there for like a half a heartbeat, so that's cool.
That's awesome.
He ribbed me. He sent me a joke. He goes, "Hey, thanks for being my movie man. Sorry, you're uncredited." I'm the only guy. Cool. I am the only guy in that fucking movie with a talking line who is fucking Cabana got a shout out there. Dreamer did. I'm sure all his buddies get fucking stuff, but good old Ben McCoy has to be uncredited, just to face the background. So,
well, I mean, that's what's great about. Oh, sorry, Ben. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say. So that's kind of how everything started with Still Here, and we're in the filming process now. We filmed yesterday. We're filming in Chicago this next week. I debuted down in Freelance down there, and we're filming with Ken Anderson in Minneapolis and in Wisconsin here next month on April 6th when he comes in for Frontline Pro, and it's kind of just taken off and kind of, it's the weirdest thing. I never thought anybody would want to make a movie about my life. And now that it's happened, it's really hard to like, let it soak in and be like, this is okay to do. Cause you're always feeling like, wow, I'm like an egotistical dick. Like, look at me like, hey, you know, movie about my life, you know, suck my wiener.
Well, no, I mean, and I was just going to say that, you know, I think that's what's great about, you know, just generally you have all this ability to get your story out, because I mean, you know, you're obviously being very humble about it, but you know, you got to think about like 99% of the population out there, I mean, has done nothing close to this. I mean, if they're lucky, they might have played some sports in high school, and you know, then they just went to their, you know, their day-to-day job. I mean,
yeah,
you know, being a pro wrestler at any level isn't exactly normal, and I think a lot of these different movies that a lot of the boys have done, you know, whether it's I saw Nick Train, which was really interesting. A lot of people, I think, find it really fascinating what a lot of us kind of just take for granted and think is normal to a certain point, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a circus life, and I find it funny because, you know, now I'm 35. I'll be 36 in the middle of the year here, and my 15-year-old son is now starting wrestling training, and he's been training it to become a professional wrestler for 6 months now. And it's just kind of crazy how it's kind of become a family affair, especially with Frontline Pro and putting everything together. And my wife does all the business side things and runs the money and runs the you know, the concessions and the raffles, and does all the hard work. So I get to go dress up in tights and play Robin Hood for a little bit. So
it's awesome that your son is now into it, because I remember at that first show of the Battle Royal, you had to do a splash on me from the top rope.
Yeah, don't worry. That's the first and last time you'll ever be anywhere near him. Hey man, I'm just saying, I gotta follow that court order. That's all.
Hey, those damn red dots keep popping up. You know, what are you gonna do?
I was hoping you wouldn't get that personal with everything.
But no, I mean, I gotta say, man, I'm really looking forward to you know, to seeing everything and hearing about it. Because I mean, knowing a person's one thing, and having a chance to chat at them with a show, or chat with them at a show, excuse me, is, you know, is obviously really cool and everything. But you know, looking forward to hearing your show and, you know, and hearing your story, and not only the, you know, wrestling side of it, but of course the military side of it. Because I think a lot of people don't even consider that, and I'm sure for you it's, you know, got to be kind of a real pain when you're sitting at home on a Sunday afternoon and, you know, Navy SEALs starring Charlie Sheen comes on, and you're watching this stuff and you're like, man, this is total bullshit. None of that happens.
Oh, that happens all the time. That's all the time. That one's not that bad. I'm more because I'm a Charlie Sheen fan, so it's all right. He gets a pass along with Swayze, so you know, and Sam Elliott. Sam Elliott gets a pass too. But
of course. I am kind of ripping off the Rogan podcast. He had I think he had a Navy SEAL on there, and they were talking about movies. But it is always funny to talk to people in the military, and you'd be like, "You mean a grenade doesn't make a huge fireball when it goes off?" They're like, "No, man, it's some dust or whatever." So I'm sure you get a kick out of that.
Yeah, I do. Those are funny. I like watching ones that go over the top with stuff. Like I watch Platoon, and I honestly laugh, which is terrible. I shouldn't laugh because there's nothing funny about Platoon, but I laugh. You want to know a military movie that gets it pretty close to reality? No lie, it's Full Metal Jacket.
Okay.
Still the original and best, huh?
It's as close to real as basic training stuff goes. That shit's dead on.
Yep.
Oh, and they had Lee. What's the name of the guy? He's actually in the
Harley Emery.
So he actually had some background, and he had input in how all that was done.
And that's probably why it was good.
Yeah. Well, and I gotta say, Ben, I mean, you and I do kind of have a bit of a connection through some of our most favorite movies. Those being the Roger Moore James Bond movies, ranked very high in our movie scale.
Moonraker like a motherfucker. Let me tell you. If you guys could name your podcast, it should be Moonraker like a motherfucker for this one. But I know you're gonna have to star out the fucker part because you don't want to have that. But.
Oh yeah,
you're making a strong case. I gotta tell you, I'm gonna see what I can do here.
Well, Quinn, if they give you any guff, man, there's always a way to handle that, which would be to either
T-bone.
Oh no, I wasn't gonna have him do that. I was just gonna have him feed you pie. So.
Well, see, I was thinking I would just say, "Put your clothes on, and I'll buy you an ice cream."
Yeah. that would work too.
So Ben, as we wrap up here, tell people where they can find everything for your Still Here, your social media, all that.
Absolutely. You can find anything with Frontline Pro through Frontline Pro 1 on Instagram and Twitter. You can find it on Facebook under Frontline Pro. And then for Still Here, stillheremovie.com is the website you can go to and check out our website for the movie. Also, it's on Facebook as well. Still Here is also on Twitter and Instagram. You can find it there. If you type in Still Here Movie, it'll pop up. You'll see it right away. And so, yeah, that's where you can find us on the social media stuff. You can follow me on Twitter at BenMcCoy825. And I'm on Facebook too under Ben Manthe because I don't believe in fan pages because it's a big pain in the ass to deal with, and which is why I haven't went over 400 followers or fans on my Facebook fan page in like 2 years. So.
And I just want to quickly get this in. You can catch Ben, from what I'm told, on Busted Open potentially Thursday or Friday. They haven't told me yet, but we'll get to you.
Yeah, I know we're recording, or as they like to say, taping on Tuesday and going from there. So.
They told me Monday. Well, they'll give us the full details. So on Monday, we'll have everything for you.
Wonderful.
Well, all right, Ben. Well, we appreciate the time that you took out for us tonight and helping us give the rub a little bit. So hopefully we can do this again very, very soon.
What do you know? Ben coming in and putting 3 guys over, just like old times.
Oh, time.
Yeah, I think the last time we worked, I put you over. So I think you had one coming.
Hey, at least you don't duck me like Dave Damone does for fucking half a decade.
Diamond Dave lays down for nobody.
I don't even know what you're talking about, Ben.
Yeah, that's right. We wrestled that one time in Canberra when DJ Solaris was spinning. I remember.
Oh, all right, Ben. We appreciate it, buddy. Why don't you go home and get some rest now?
Absolutely. You guys take care. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate you guys.
We appreciate you for coming on.
Thanks, brother.
Right.
See you, man. Thanks for everything.
Take care, Quinn. Please get better friends.
I'll do my best. It's a limited selection up here in Appleton.